thank you. She wanted to share. Please.
Well, first of all, thank you all for coming on a beautiful Saturday morning. It would have been much easier to stay home and work in the yard or something. So, I like working in the yard. The Grass Valley contingency that came down, thank you. I appreciate that. For Susie, my right-hand girl, who's helping me keep me calm. Drive-In gave us a great...
Barista.
Yeah, barista. And then just a little plug for the women's retreat. We had our first one a couple of years ago up in Grass Valley, our gracious host. And so we decided that we'll try to do it here, although it won't be as good a job. They have amazing hospitality up there. But anyway, October 19th, actually Katie Shuermann, who is the editor of this book and also has written several books, will be the presenter. So, yeah. So it's going to be an amazing day. October 19th, I will send stuff out via email soon, but put it on your calendar because there will be limited space. So we're probably looking at maybe 90
to 100.
90 to 100.
That's going to be here?
Yeah.
October 19th, I'll put something out. It may be titled the same, but it won't be the same as what we're doing today. But we'll start getting sign-ups quickly. But it's going to be, she's going to be great. So, okay.
October 19th.
On Saturday.
Yep.
Right in there.
In Meyer Hall.
Not here.
Right next door. Yeah, we'll have a bigger room there.
We'll have a bigger room. So, yeah.
Maybe we can get a special dispensation for food, but I'm not promising anything.
We'd have to come in here.
We'll figure something out. Okay. What I would like to do for the next half an hour or so is try to shift our focus a little bit forward and ask the question of what did you learn from this book or from this conversation even over the last hour that you're able to take away, that you can kind of take home with you, something that will provide you with comfort or direction or counsel or help for yourself or for someone else. And then also asking a little bit broader question of how can we learn from this for our churches? What can Holy Cross Lutheran Church do that might be reflective of this? What can Grace Lutheran Church do that might be reflective of this approach to community, to the Word of God, to the liturgy, to a theology of the cross, and all of these things? Are there things that we can put in place or have put in place that reflect this, or that we can work on reflecting better? So that's kind of my start off question, and also just kind of in more generally, if you have specific questions about a chapter or a particular topic, by all means fire away, and we'll pool our ignorance with yours. So that is no problem. Anybody wanna take a crack at that? Just kind of how do we start with this? And what takeaways did you get from this, if anything? Yeah, Jill.
I haven't read the book, but God's timing is timing in my life, which is my right which is God also. And it just reinforces that there's no quick fix for anything. But as long as it points us back to Christ and what He did on the cross, so that brings such comfort to me.
like to go back to something, Pam, that you said, that at moments you experience that God is not enough. And what we can do, how do we survive that torrent?
Well, I think one, admitting that sometimes God's not enough, right? I mean, how many pious Lutherans are going to say that? and I knew that he was, but in my despair, it was, you're not enough. I'm suffering, I'm hurting, I don't want it. And being able to hear it if someone else says it, and not try to fix it, and listen. And then there is a time then to be that reality reflection. I know that maybe that's what it feels like, but this is what I know to be true. God's mercy and steadfast love lasts forever. It never changes. And maybe you can't do that right now, but that is the reality in which we live. Because when we're hurting, as Pastor said too, it may not be a solace then, but to know that that is the truth, even if it feels outside of myself, that's comforting. Not like you should know this, or if you just know these Bible passages and read them every day, you're going to be okay, but recognizing that sometimes it feels as if God's not enough. God's always enough. But our minds are like, no, I don't think so. Does that answer your question?
Walt, and then Patty.
It's not a sin to feel abandoned by God.
I mean, Jesus
It
felt
feels that way.
abandoned by God. My God, why have you forsaken me? If Jesus can say it, I think I can say it.
Patty.
Another thing that I thought was nice was some of the hymns they had in there. Makes you really appreciate the hymns you sing on Sunday. Not just the melodies, the words. The words are so important. The last 3 or 4 months, really listening to the words that I am singing in church. And when she was talking about Jesus, and the first thing that popped in my head, Jesus loved me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Little ones who belong, they are weak, but he is strong. And my head's always full of songs. So during sermons, they'll pop into my head, and my husband smacks me, so I'll quit singing them. But they have such an impact on you, the words of the hymns and the songs, and they stay with you. So you might not think you know the Bible as well as you do, but you know what? You really do. They are in there, in your subconscious.
More in there than you remember.
And that to those, oh my goodness, especially these Lent songs that we're singing.
Well,
Holy moly.
and I've Patty certainly heard me say this on more than one occasion, that a part of my goal as the pastor is to teach liturgy and scripture and hymnody so that it is something that we are always growing into, not something that we are growing out of. That I want there always to be things so that in a year, 5 years, 20 years, 50 years, and 70 years, and however many years God gives us, that those words are going to continue to resonate and connect. And that is one of the things that this book does very, very well, is I think every chapter ends with a hymn, and that there's a lot of ties to the hymns of our church that I appreciate very much personally, and kind of making those connections. It's there, and I'm so what's next? Levi, and then Lois.
I just had a question on which you mentioned that I do feel suffering is very isolating, and psychologically you feel isolated generally you're going through it. And on the other side, I feel like people are not, Christians are not particularly great at knowing how to deal with someone who's suffering. We're really good at celebrating with people who are having a great time, and that's awesome. But I know I feel this myself. If someone's suffering, it's just kind of this feeling of like, I'm completely unprepared for this situation.
Right.
And I don't know what to say. I feel like I'm gonna say the wrong thing and make it worse.
Right.
And it's kind of a paralyzing experience, which makes it even worse for the person who's actually suffering and needs that comfort and community. So I would love to hear any, like, you know, how do we
Well,
fight that?
my first reaction to that, and I have that same response remarkably often. And you would think since I kind of get to practice that a lot, that I would be better at it. But my first reaction to that is usually to say, I don't know what to say, literally, and to just again to simply lay it out on where you are at. Because if you say just about anything else, you're going to come across as false, because it will be false. And so to say, I don't know what to say or do, I know that I love you and I have no idea where that takes us. Okay, great. At least that's honest.
Well, it's, you're making yourself vulnerable as
Right,
well.
precisely. And so that is entering into weakness
Exactly.
in some small way. And that is, there's a lot to be said for being truthful. There really is. And one of the most, I know, it is kind of countercultural, right? And one of the most annoying and frustrating things that I think that we have experienced with the Googleization of society is that is the idea that I should have an instant answer for anything at any given moment. And it's just not true. It's just not. And it's actually really okay to say I don't know, and I feel terrible, and I don't know what to say or to fix or make it better. I think that is maybe the best possible thing you can say at that moment, unless the deaconess says something better to say.
But, you know, as you said, but I'm here for you.
Yeah.
I want to walk alongside you with this. I can't, but I agree.
Lois and Barbara.
I haven't read the book. I started reading it and something or other thing happened and I didn't get it completed, but I'm really looking forward to it. But listening to all the conversations and so forth this morning, one thing, I am reassured that I'm not alone with what's going on in my life.
Mm-hmm.
That is so reassuring, and to know that you have the same feelings that I'm experiencing. And that's a blessing to me, because so often I beat myself up. Why am I thinking this way? I'm a Christian, I should know better, right?
Yep.
Okay, guess what? I'm human. I have fallacies, I sin, I need the Lord, and there are times when, I don't, God, where are you? I don't see you in this mess. Where in the world are you? You're supposed to be my God. You're supposed to be my right hand, and I really don't see you at this moment. But praise God, you know, that He's there despite all of these things. And somebody made a comment that when, I don't know whether it was Liz or who, about when someone comes to them and say, I understand.
Yeah.
I will do that, but I also will say, but I'm not walking in your shoes, because I may have experienced something similar to that individual. So I have some small understanding of what they're going through, but I'm not walking in your shoes. Is there something I can do to help you?
And maybe just a little kind of practical side note with this, and this is something that when people are talking with me about their trials, about what they are, and a part of what all of us are kind of desperately trying to do in that moment is to come up with a way of connecting with this person, a way of identifying with them, and these things, all of which is good. That's not a bad thing. One of the ways that can go completely sideways is you end up kind of telling your story, and you think that you're actually identifying with them, but really what you're doing is just talking about yourself. And that ultimately is not helpful. And that's something. This is kind of a gut check that I always have, is if I'm going to talk about depression, let's say, Am I talking about depression because I feel like I need to talk about my depression? Or am I talking about this in order to do it in a way that's truly going to be helpful to another person? And and again, this is a tension. We're all going to screw it up. So welcome to Earth. It's okay. But that is just something to kind of keep in mind, that our desire to identify with other people is also something Satan can try and use to just make it all about you. Again, along the way. Does that make sense?
Well, and just the fact too, I mean, one thing that Christ promises to us who follow him is that we are gonna be persecuted and suffer.
Right.
And so, you know, I think that sometimes we have this false idea that we're Christians and we should have it all together. When really the opposite is, we're gonna be attacked. We're gonna suffer. We're gonna be persecuted for his sake. And so the question then becomes, what do I do in that suffering? To whom do I cling? Who is my identity? Is it me or is it Christ? And those are the lessons that we get to learn over and over again as we stumble and fall. Because some of us don't learn very well. Get a lot of lessons.
Barbara.
For myself, I find that it's something that is helpful if I'm sharing with you is your witticism, your little witty comments.
Am I being a smart aleck?
Sometimes that will lighten the mood a little bit. I try not to be too arrogant that way, but sometimes I'll come up with something.
Well, and I think the way that I would put it is, you know, just kind of getting back to Levi's question from before, is we have to be ourselves. Can't try and pretend to be somebody we're not, or to act in a way that's not authentic or true. And a part of what that means is learning, is kind of learning our own strengths and weaknesses, our own voice, and our own way of speaking. And I honestly have a pretty dark sense of humor, and that can actually be of benefit with some people. I know when I started talking about depression 10 years ago, kind of publicly, one of the things that I pretty quickly learned was that getting people to sort of see the darkness and to kind of recognize the darkness is actually a way of removing its fear. And that recognizing that we have the victory, and that I can in some respects laugh at my own failures, and definitely laugh at Satan's failures, is a gift. It's a strange gift, but it's a gift nonetheless. That's a good thing. Yeah, authentic voice.
And getting back to when we're in a hurry on Sunday mornings, and we don't have the time to do whatever to people, how are you doing? And I found this out just by accident. I wanted to see a person, they already sat down and church was already starting, but they were sitting on the outside of the pews. And when I went up to communion, I just lightly touched their shoulder and I kept going up. And I didn't know it would make that much of an impact, but that person after church came and said, "Thank you so very much. I needed that." And that was it.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, it's just a touch. Sometimes a person just to know a simple touch, that's all they need. So.
Can be so. Any other kind of takeaways or thoughts or questions? Yeah, Gary.
I think the people that wrote this book, because of their position in the church, being deaconesses or cantors and so on, to read this and to think that these people who are, you might think of as elevated, in a sense,
Or not.
who are going through hell, excuse the language, but truly, in most cases here, is very freeing, because I'm hoping that people who read this will be able to open their hearts and share to others what's going on with them. Because as you said, a lot of people, it's very isolating to be in suffering. And this is very healing in the sense, because if you could, it opens people's hearts up to sharing what's going on with them. There's a chance for them to get love and support from others. And one other comment. I used to be in some support groups years ago, and I began thinking of, well, why don't we just call Church Sinners Anonymous? But then it occurred to me, we're not anonymous.
We're not anonymous.
We're not anonymous. Christ is there, and He loves us, and He knows us. So we're not anonymous. But
Maybe we should just call ourselves sinners.
There you go.
Or miserable.
More miserable. Well,
I'm not even good at sitting.
I'm not touching that. I'm not touching that. Any other kind of comments or observations? Ada?
Questions. I live in Sun City.
Yes?
My neighbors are mostly widows.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it becomes overwhelming to the needs of my friends.
Mm.
And I think, I don't want this. I don't want to be the one they come to.
Right.
And I find it so refreshing when I'm with families, other people, but I'm just overwhelmed by the grief that is going on around me.
And
I don't know.
Yeah.
It sort of pulls me down.
it does. Well, and I mean, and compassion fatigue is a very real thing. We've talked about that a few times off and on. Simply this notion that your capacity to care for others is limited. I mean, each of us we're human beings. We've got limits, and a part of the and this is, I think, a lifelong learning process, is learning our own limitations, learning when am I at the point when I am no longer able to help others? How do I come to grips with the reality? This is terribly hard for me as a pastor to learn, is that if I'm not taking care of myself, I am absolutely no good to anybody else. And that's an example of where, okay, so what am I capable of as God has given me light and wisdom? And how do I, and that may also mean asking yourself and others, how do I get refreshed along the way? Because that too is an important piece to that, is how do I get built up when that fatigue sets in? Tammy, how do you think that?
I think that, just being with people that are suffering, sometimes we have to have boundaries, like he's saying, and sometimes you just can't do it. And someone else may pick up that slack for you.
Sometimes I feel like I'm pulling myself away from them because I can't listen to their grief.
But sometimes you can't. I mean, that's a reality, and that's okay. I mean, I don't think that God calls us to be on 100% of the time. We have to, as Pastor says, we have to recognize our limit and our time of, I can't do that right now. But another time you could.
Boundaries are hard.
They are, they're messy too.
Oh, man, that's a whole other topic. Lois.
Ada, even Jesus took time and
That's right.
That's right.
He went to quiet places and prayed and just needed some time alone. And I think that's something we neglect too often in our lives, that we need that alone time. Just whether it's to pray, just to pull ourselves away, whatever, we need that time. God wants us to have that time. And we are not supposed to give up when those times come.
Any other thoughts? I think we're just about wrapping up here. Barbara.
We were talking about the liturgy.
Yes.
A beautiful thing to me of the liturgy is the whole universal church across the whole world can share in the same thing. In Korea, in Germany, they may be singing it in a different language, but they're singing the liturgy. You can go to a church in Italy, even a Catholic church, and go along with the liturgy. You may not understand any of the language, but you know where they are in the service. And I think of my parents. I think, that they sang the liturgy, and I think of them singing it in heaven.
I like that. And one of the things that I have that I've spoken many times is kind of a Lutheranism, not Lutheranism, but a Lutheranism, is that in the Lord's Supper we bring our burdens to the altar and we share them with one another, and that when I bring that, when someone comes to me and shares their sufferings with me, I bring that with me to the altar as well. And so Christ participates and shares in their sufferings as I bring that to the altar. And that's a part of where and this is just something I as a pastor have had to kind of, had beaten into me, frankly, is that I'm not Jesus. I can't fix them. I can't make everything right. But I bring them so that they are gathered with angels and archangels and with all the company of heaven, and that comfort of community is there for them and with them as well. Any other comments or thoughts? Any last words, Deaconess? Thoughts?
Amen.
Thank you so much. And please wrap up. It looks like to me like we've done fairly well on this. There's a little bit left there, so
Coffee fellowship tomorrow morning.
yeah, bring it for fellowship. Take some home to your kids, or grandkids, or whomever as you see fit. Let's stand up and pray the Lord's Prayer and hear the benediction. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all. Amen. Thank you again, everyone, for coming. If I could have a couple people help with bringing the white tables into Meyer Hall. Walt, can you help to coordinate that? Yes. Great, thank you.